This was supposed to be content, clicks, a joke. Instead, someone ended up bleeding in New York, and the internet went silent. Trolling just became a life-or-death game. This isn't drama, this is digital blood on the timeline. For years, rage bait ruled everything. Disrespect equals engagement. Mockery equals money. Outrage equals algorithmic gold. And at the center of that storm, Adin Ross and the troll-era titans, untouchable, unstoppable, laughing while the internet burned. They pushed buttons, they crossed lines, they made millions doing it. Until New York answered back. Until the streets reminded everyone that clicks don't stop consequences. Until a hospital bed replaced a punchline. And now the entire internet is asking one question nobody wants to say out loud. Was it worth it? Let me break down what actually happened, because this situation is layered with chaos, recklessness, and consequences nobody saw coming. Adin Ross's close circle traveled to New York. That part is confirmed. Multiple sources, social media posts, geotagged stories, all of it points to a planned trip. And on the surface, it looked like typical influencer behavior. Content, vibes, maybe some collabs. Nothing out of the ordinary for a crew that thrives on attention. But here's where things take a dark turn. A diss track surfaced, allegedly, and this wasn't some playful roast or subliminal aimed at another streamer. No, this track allegedly mocked real-life street figures, people with real ties, real history, real reach. And for anyone who doesn't understand how that world operates, let me explain it simply. You don't disrespect people who live by a different code just because you got a blue checkmark and a streaming setup. That's not how reality works. Shortly after that track hit the internet, gunshots. Multiple reports claim that one individual in Adin's circle was hit, hospitalized, and the footage that leaked, it captures everything. Thuds, chaos, panic, people scrambling, voices yelling, the kind of raw, unfiltered terror that no amount of editing can fake. This wasn't a skit, this wasn't staged for views, this was real violence spilling into real life. And here's the part that makes your stomach turn. Friends later posted videos dancing, laughing, acting like nothing happened, like someone didn't just get rushed to a hospital with a gunshot wound, like the entire situation was just another Tuesday. That level of detachment, that's not confidence, that's denial, that's trauma response mixed with ego. That's what happens when you live so deep in the content bubble that you forget blood is real. Let that sink in for a second. Someone may have almost died, and the internet treated it like a skit. Comment sections filled with jokes, memes, reaction clips, people debating whether it was real or fake instead of acknowledging that a human being was in danger. And that right there, that's the core sickness of this entire era. We've normalized violence as entertainment. We've turned real consequences into clickbait. We've made trauma go viral. Now, fans online turned into investigators. They always do. Frame-by-frame breakdowns, audio analysis, comparing voices, matching locations. Folks online swear they can hear the exact moment impact happened. They're zooming into reflections on car windows, trying to identify faces. They're cross-referencing timestamps with hospital records that somehow leaked. It's like a true crime documentary happening in real time, except nobody's asking if this kind of content should even exist. And for anyone still questioning if this was real or staged, let me give you the most damning piece of evidence. Adin Ross himself confirmed it. Not in some cryptic tweet, not in a vague Instagram story. He straight up said it was real. He confirmed that his boy got hit. He confirmed the chaos. He confirmed the fear. And when someone like Adin, who thrives on controversy and borderline admits something went too far, you know it's serious. TMZ picked it up, news outlets started reporting. Suddenly, this wasn't just internet drama anymore. This was a legitimate criminal investigation. Police involved, witnesses being interviewed, security footage being reviewed. The whole thing escalated from content to case in less than 48 hours. Think about that timeline. One moment, you're reporting a diss track for views. The next moment, someone's bleeding. The moment after that, lawyers are getting called. That's how fast the line between entertainment and emergency can collapse. And the scariest part, a lot of people in that circle still don't fully grasp what almost happened. Online detectives found even more. They dug into past beef, old tweets, deleted videos, connections between Adin's crew and people they allegedly disrespected, and every new detail painted the same picture. This wasn't random. This wasn't unprovoked. This was the inevitable result of poking the wrong people for too long. Some folks are comparing voice patterns in the diss track to known street figures. Others are matching locations and leaked footage to known territories. And while a lot of this is speculation, the core facts remain undeniable. Someone got shot, someone from Adin's circle ended up in a hospital, and it all traces back to content that crossed the line. But it gets even crazier. Reports say the crew tried to downplay it at first, tried to keep it quiet, tried to control the narrative before it exploded. But in the age of smartphones and social media, nothing stays hidden. Somebody always records, somebody always leaks. And once that footage hit the internet, there was no putting the genie back in the bottle. Now the whole world is watching, waiting, asking questions, demanding accountability. And for the first time in a long time, the troll-era titans don't have a punchline ready. This didn't come out of nowhere. This was the inevitable collapse of a culture built on recklessness, clout chasing, and the dangerous belief that money equals immunity. Let's rewind and understand how we got here. Adin Ross rose to fame during the golden age of rage-bait content, a time when the algorithm rewarded chaos over quality, when disrespect got more views than respect, when crossing lines wasn't just acceptable, it was profitable. And Adin mastered that game. He knew exactly what buttons to push. He knew how to manufacture outrage. He knew how to turn controversy into cash. But here's the problem with that formula. When you build an empire on provocation, you eventually run out of soft targets. You start needing bigger reactions, louder controversies, more extreme situations. And that's when people start crossing into dangerous territory. That's when streamers start cosplaying lifestyles they don't actually live. That's when jokes become threats. That's when content becomes consequence. Adin didn't just troll other streamers, he went after rappers, street figures, people with real ties to real violence. And every time he did, his audience grew. Every time he pushed further, the views skyrocketed. And that positive reinforcement created a feedback loop that made it impossible to pump the brakes. Think about the culture that enabled this. Kick, the platform Adin streams on, built its entire brand on being the no-rules alternative to Twitch. They welcomed creators who got banned elsewhere. They let content slide that would never fly on other platforms. And while that freedom attracted talent, it also attracted chaos. It created an environment where consequences felt optional, where boundaries didn't exist, where the only metric that mattered was engagement. And Adin thrived in that environment. He brought on guests that other platforms wouldn't touch. He said things that would get anyone else canceled. He created spectacles that blurred the line between entertainment and endangerment. And for a while, it worked. The money poured in, the fame grew, the influence expanded. He became one of the biggest names in streaming, all by playing a game nobody else was willing to play. But here's what people forget. When you mock real people, when you disrespect real cultures, when you bait real street figures for content, you're not just risking your own safety, you're risking everyone around you, your friends, your crew, your family. Because the streets don't care about your subscriber count. They don't care about your net worth. They don't care that you're just a streamer. Once you cross that line, you're in the game. And the game has rules you can't click away from. Let's talk about the diss track specifically. According to multiple sources, the track contained direct disrespect aimed at people with known street ties. Names were allegedly mentioned, territories were allegedly mocked. And for anyone familiar with that world, you know that's not something you do casually. That's not something you do for jokes. That's a declaration. That's a challenge. And challenges get answered. Adin's crew may not have understood that. They may have thought they were untouchable. They may have believed that their online fame created some kind of protective shield. But the streets don't have Wi-Fi. The streets don't stream. The streets operate on a completely different frequency. And when you broadcast on that frequency without understanding the language, you get static, you get interference, you get consequences. Now let's get into the psychology of this. Adin Ross is young.
He grew up in the internet era. His entire worldview is shaped by algorithms, engagement metrics, and virality. In that world, everything is content. Everything is reversible. Everything can be edited, deleted, or explained away in a future stream. But real life doesn't work like that. Real violence doesn't have a delete button. Real blood doesn't disappear with an apology video. And that disconnect is what makes this situation so tragic. Because deep down, I don't think Adin or his crew wanted this. I don't think they woke up that morning planning for someone to get shot. I think they were chasing clout, chasing views, chasing the high that comes from going viral. And somewhere in that chase, they lost sight of the difference between performance and reality. But ignorance doesn't erase consequences. You can't play with fire and act shocked when something burns. You can't mock people who live by a code of violence and expect them to laugh it off. You can't cosplay danger and expect danger to stay pretend. And that's the lesson Adin Ross is learning the hardest way possible. This situation also exposes the entire troll-era ecosystem. Academics, Vlad, Adam22, No Jumper, all these platforms that profit off conflict, drama, and controversy. They create the infrastructure that makes this behavior profitable. They normalize disrespect as content. They turn real beef into edutainment. And when something like this happens, they distance themselves. They say, we're just covering the news. But they're not. They're actively shaping the culture that leads to these moments. And let's be clear, this isn't about censorship. This isn't about limiting free speech. This is about responsibility. When you have a platform, when you have influence, when you have millions of eyes on you, you carry weight. And that weight has consequences. You can't just throw stones and hide your hands. You can't create chaos and claim you're just an observer. Adin Ross built his empire on chaos, and now that chaos has come home. Put all that together, and it looks like the perfect recipe for disaster. A young creator with too much influence, a platform with too few rules, an audience that rewards extremes, and a culture that treats violence like entertainment. Mix all that together, and this outcome was inevitable. The only question now is, will anyone learn from it?
But here's the part that really hits different. The one who got caught in the middle of all this chaos wasn't Adin. It wasn't the person who made the diss track. It wasn't even someone who wanted to be involved. It was a young man who was just there. Someone who probably thought this was going to be another content trip, another adventure, another story to tell. And instead, he ended up in a hospital bed fighting for his life over beef that wasn't even his. That's the part nobody wants to talk about. When you're in Adin's circle, when you're rolling with someone that famous, that influential, that loud, you assume you're protected. You assume the clout extends to you. You assume that being adjacent to power keeps you safe. But power doesn't stop bullets. Fame doesn't stop consequences. And proximity to influence doesn't make you untouchable. The leaked footage shows pure terror. You can see it in the body language, hear it in the voices. That split second when entertainment becomes emergency. When the vibes shift from hype to horror. When everyone realizes this isn't content anymore, this is survival. And you know what the worst part is? That young man probably looked up to Adin, probably trusted him, probably felt honored to be part of the crew. And now he's dealing with trauma that will follow him for the rest of his life. Physical wounds might heal, but the mental scars, the fear, the realization that you almost died over someone else's joke, that doesn't go away. That's somebody's friend, somebody's son, somebody's brother, and he got dragged into a war he didn't sign up for. And while the internet debates whether the situation was real or fake, while memes spread, while engagement numbers climb, that young man is in a hospital room processing the fact that his life almost ended for content. Think about how dark that is. Think about how twisted this whole system has become when a human life becomes collateral damage in the race for virality. You can hate Adin Ross, you can despise his content, you can call him toxic, reckless, irresponsible, and honestly, you'd be justified. But when you see a young face possibly fighting for his life, if you cheer, something in you is broken. This isn't victory, this isn't karma, this isn't justice.
This is tragedy built by clicks. This is what happens when an entire generation is raised to believe that attention is more valuable than safety. This is the cost of the troll era, and the bill just came due. And here's the question nobody wants to answer. How many more people have to get hurt before this culture changes? How many more hospital visits? How many more close calls? How many more lives have to be put at risk before we collectively say, enough? Because right now, as this video is being made, as this script is being written, as this situation continues to unfold, someone is in a hospital bed. Someone is recovering from a gunshot wound. Someone is living with the consequences of a decision they didn't even make. And that's not entertainment. That's not drama. That's not content. That's a human being. And he deserves better than to be a footnote in someone else's viral moment.
Now let's get into the aftermath, because this is where the story gets even darker. Adin Ross himself went live shortly after the incident. And for anyone who's watched Adin's streams before, you know his energy. Loud, brash, confident, always in control, always performing. But this stream? This was different. You could see it in his face, hear it in his voice, feel it in the pauses. This wasn't performance, this was panic. He confirmed it was real. He confirmed that JJ, one of his boys, got shot and hospitalized. He confirmed the chaos. He confirmed the fear. And in that moment, the mask slipped, the troll persona cracked, and what was underneath? A scared kid who just realized the game he's been playing has consequences he can't undo. Emergency jets were arranged, private flights scrambled, medical teams contacted, lawyers activated. The entire operation shifted from content mode to crisis mode in a matter of hours. And you could see the scramble happening in real time, stories getting deleted, posts being edited, damage control in full effect. But here's the thing about the internet. Screenshots are forever, clips are eternal, and once something goes viral, there's no taking it back. People archived everything. Every deleted post, every contradictory statement, every moment of panic. And now it's all being dissected, analyzed, and used as evidence in the court of public opinion. The stream tone shifted drastically. Where there used to be jokes, now there was silence. Where there used to be bravado, now there was fear. Where there used to be confidence, now there were lawyers advising what could and couldn't be said. You could literally watch in real time as someone realized they were in over their head. Adin made a statement about moving like the president. He used to say that all the time. He used to brag about his security, his team, his protection. He used to act like he was untouchable. But as he sat there on that stream, processing what just happened, I wonder if he remembered history. Presidents get touched too. Ask JFK. Ask Lincoln. Ask Reagan. Power doesn't stop consequences. Fame doesn't prevent violence. And moving like the president just means you're a bigger target. It means more eyes, more attention, more people with reasons to test you. And in this case, someone tested him, and his crew paid the price. Fans noticed the shift immediately. Comment sections flooded with concern. Some people expressed genuine worry, others mocked him for finally facing reality. But the overwhelming sentiment was shock, because for years, Adin operated like none of this could touch him, like the trolling was consequence-free, like the disrespect was just business. And in one night, that entire illusion shattered. Let me break down the timeline even further because the details matter. Reports say the incident happened late at night, New York streets, multiple witnesses, gunshots fired, one person hit, chaos erupts. The crew scatters, some people run, some people freeze, some people pull out phones and start recording, because that's the reflex now. Document everything, even trauma, even terror, even the moment someone's life hangs in the balance. Medical response was reportedly fast. Ambulance arrived, victim transported, hospital intake, emergency treatment. And while all that's happening, the internet is already spinning the story, already creating narratives, already turning a real-life emergency into content. Adin's immediate response was reportedly confusion mixed with denial. This can't be real. This can't be happening. This was just supposed to be content. But it was real. It was happening. And the streets don't care about your intentions. They care about your actions. And the actions crossed a line that invited retaliation. Now, let's talk about what happened after the immediate crisis.
friends posted videos dancing, smiling, acting like nothing happened. And on the surface, that looks psychotic. It looks heartless. It looks like they don't care. But dig deeper and you realize it's a trauma response. It's denial. It's the brain's way of protecting itself from processing something too overwhelming to handle. When reality becomes too heavy, some people shut down, some people disassociate, some people perform normalcy because the alternative is confronting a nightmare. But the internet doesn't understand nuance. The internet saw those videos and immediately judged. They don't care. They're celebrating. They're monsters. And while I understand that reaction, it misses the complexity of what's actually happening. These are young people who just experienced something traumatic, and instead of being given space to process, they're being dissected by millions of strangers. That being said, posting those videos was a terrible decision, because regardless of the psychological reasoning, optics matter. And the optics of dancing hours after your friend got shot, that's indefensible. That's the kind of image that follows you forever. That's the kind of moment that defines how people see you. Security footage allegedly exists, multiple angles, clear shots of what happened, and according to sources, law enforcement has that footage. They're reviewing it, they're building a case, and depending on what that footage shows, this could escalate from drama to criminal charges, not just for the shooters, but potentially for the people whose actions provoked the violence. Think about that. Adin and his crew could potentially face legal consequences not for pulling a trigger, but for creating the conditions that led to violence, for reckless endangerment, for inciting conflict, for actions that directly resulted in harm. And if that happens, this stops being internet drama and becomes a legal precedent. It becomes a case study in how online behavior can have real-world criminal consequences. And here's the part that should terrify every content creator watching this. If Adin Ross, with all his money, all his lawyers, all his resources, can't escape consequences, what makes you think you can? What makes any creator think they're immune? This situation just proved that the internet and the streets are not separate worlds. They overlap. And when they collide, the results can be catastrophic. More reports keep surfacing, more details keep leaking, more pieces of the puzzle keep falling into place, and with each new revelation, the picture gets clearer. This wasn't an accident, this wasn't random, this was cause and effect. This was the natural result of a culture that prioritizes virality over safety, engagement over empathy, and clicks over consequences. The same man who once joked about being untouchable is now reportedly hiring more security, reportedly reconsidering his approach, reportedly realizing that maybe, just maybe, some lines shouldn't be crossed. But is it genuine reflection, or is it just fear? Only time will tell.
And this incident doesn't exist in a vacuum. This is part of a much larger pattern, a pattern of influencers cosplaying street culture and facing real consequences. Well, let's talk about Tekashi 6ix9ine for a second, because his story is the blueprint for what happens when trolling meets reality. 6ix9ine built his entire career on disrespect. He mocked gangs, he threw up fake sets, he pretended to be something he wasn't, and it worked. He got famous, he got rich, he got attention, until the people he was mocking decided to make an example out of him. He got kidnapped, beaten, robbed, and when the feds came calling, he cooperated. He snitched, he testified, and while he's still alive and still making music, his reputation is destroyed. He can't go to certain cities, he can't perform in certain venues. He lives with 24/7 security because he knows the streets don't forget. And every time you see him now, you see someone who learned the lesson the hardest way possible. Adin Ross is on that same trajectory. Different details, same pattern. Provoke real people, profit from the controversy, face real consequences, and then spend the rest of your career looking over your shoulder. Then there's the whole drill rap conversation. Chicago drill, Brooklyn drill, UK drill. All these music scenes that glorify violence. And while the music is artistic expression, it's also documentation. It's real people rapping about real situations. And when that music goes viral, when suburban kids start streaming it, when influencers start using it for content, the line between art and evidence gets blurred. Platforms like YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Music profit off drill music. They promote it, they playlist it, they pay artists for it. But when the violence in the music spills into real life, suddenly everyone distances themselves. Suddenly it's, we don't condone violence. But you do. You monetize it. You amplify it. You make it go viral.
You just don't want to be held accountable when the consequences catch up. And then there's the whole media ecosystem that feeds off this chaos. Academics built a career on covering hip-hop beef. Vlad TV made millions off interview clips that exposed street politics. Adam 22 and No Jumper turned rap drama into a daily show. And all of them profit when things escalate. They get views when someone gets shot. They get engagement when beef turns violent. They get clicks when tragedy strikes. And then they throw their hands up and say, "I'm just reporting the news." But you're not just reporting, you're incentivizing. You're creating a culture where beef is profitable, where conflict is content, where violence is views. And when creators like Adin Ross see that model working, they replicate it. They push boundaries, they cross lines, because that's what gets rewarded. This entire era of content has been built on exploitation, exploiting trauma, exploiting conflict, exploiting real people's pain for entertainment, and we've all participated. Every view, every share, every comment, we've all fed the beast. And now that beast is eating its own. The War on Chicago era was a perfect example. Mainstream media outlets ran stories about Chicago violence like it was a spectacle. They turned real deaths into headlines. They treated gang culture like a reality show. And while they claimed they were raising awareness, they were really just profiting off tragedy. And that normalization made it easier for influencers to do the same. Adin Ross saw that model. He saw how conflict creates content, how controversy creates cash, and he applied it to his own career. But he made one critical mistake. He forgot that the people he was mocking aren't characters. They're not NPCs in a video game. They're real human beings with real power and real willingness to use it. And now he's facing the consequences of that mistake. Every single influencer watching this needs to ask themselves a question. Is the content worth it? Is the virality worth risking your life? Is the engagement worth putting your friends in danger? Because this situation just proved that the answer is no, it's never worth it. No amount of views justifies a hospital visit. No amount of money justifies a funeral. But will people listen? History says no, because the incentive structure hasn't changed. The algorithm still rewards chaos. Platforms still profit off controversy. And as long as that's true, more creators will push boundaries, more people will get hurt, and more situations like this will happen. The culture has to change. The platforms have to change. The audience has to change. Because if we keep rewarding this behavior, if we keep clicking on the drama, if we keep making trauma go viral, then we're all complicit. We're all part of the problem. And the blood is on all of our hands.
So what does this mean for the future of content creation? What does this mean for streaming? What does this mean for the troll era? It means the game just changed, and everyone who built a career on rage bait needs to be paying attention. You cannot disrespect real people and hide behind, "I'm just a streamer." You cannot mock real street figures and expect them to respect your digital boundaries. You cannot cosplay danger and expect danger to stay pretend. The streets don't operate on internet logic. They operate on respect, reputation, and retaliation. And when you violate those rules, there are consequences that no amount of subscribers can protect you from. This situation is a warning shot to every aspiring creator, every young streamer, every person building a brand on controversy. The message is simple. Lines exist, and when you cross them, you don't just risk your career, you risk your life. You risk the lives of everyone around you, and that's not a gamble worth taking. But here's the darker possibility. This situation might not humble Adin Ross at all. It might actually empower his worst instincts, because in the troll era playbook, victimhood is content, survival is a storyline, and trauma is monetizable. There's a real risk that instead of reflection, we get exploitation. Instead of growth, we get more recklessness. Instead of learning, we get doubling down. And if that happens, the cycle continues. More creators push boundaries, more people get hurt, more situations escalate, and eventually someone doesn't make it to the hospital. Someone doesn't survive. And then we'll all be sitting here asking, how did we let it get this far? The platforms need to take responsibility. Kick, YouTube, Twitch, all of them. They need to create consequences for reckless behavior.
They need to enforce boundaries. They need to make it clear that violence isn't content, that trauma isn't entertainment, that human lives are more valuable than engagement metrics. But will they? Probably not, because violence sells, controversy drives traffic, and as long as that's true, platforms will turn a blind eye. They'll write vague community guidelines, they'll issue token warnings, but they won't actually do anything until the legal liability becomes too great to ignore. And the audience, we need to look in the mirror too, because every time we click on drama, every time we share chaos, every time we reward controversy with our attention, we're voting. We're telling creators this is what we want, and they're giving it to us. So if we want the culture to change, we have to change what we consume. This isn't about censorship. This isn't about limiting creativity. This is about respect. Respect for human life. Respect for consequences. Respect for the fact that not everything should be content. Some lines exist for a reason. And when you cross them, you're not being edgy, you're not being bold, you're being reckless. And recklessness has a cost. The troll era is dying, and this situation might be the final nail in the coffin. Because when trolling stops being funny and starts being fatal, the joke ends, the game ends, and what's left is just wreckage and regret. And here's the darkest twist that nobody's talking about yet. This situation may actually make things worse, because Adin Ross now has a story, he has trauma, he has victimhood, and in the attention economy, that's currency. He can spin this into content for months. My friend got shot, we survived, here's what really happened. Every angle, every detail, every emotion, all of it becomes monetizable. And if he goes that route, he proves he learned nothing. Because the respectful move, the human move, is to go quiet, process privately, support your friend, reflect on what happened, and maybe, just maybe, change your approach. But that doesn't drive views, that doesn't generate revenue, that doesn't feed the machine. So there's a very real possibility that instead of growth, we get exploitation. Instead of change, we get content. And if that happens, it sends a message to every other creator. It tells them that you can cross lines, cause harm, face consequences, and still profit. It tells them that trauma is just another content vertical, that violence is just another storyline, and that's a future nobody should want. But let's speculate even further. What if more details come out? What if the investigation reveals things that make this situation even darker? What if there are legal charges? What if civil suits follow? What if this becomes a precedent-setting case that changes how platforms handle dangerous content? All of that is possible, and all of that is still unfolding. Or what if the opposite happens? What if this gets swept under the rug? What if lawyers make it disappear? What if settlements get signed and NDAs get filed, and the whole thing becomes a footnote? That's possible too. Because money has a way of making problems vanish, fame has a way of rewriting narratives, and power has a way of avoiding accountability. But even if the legal side goes away, the cultural impact remains. This moment will be referenced forever. Every time a creator thinks about crossing a line, every time someone considers disrespecting the wrong people, every time trolling edges toward danger, this situation will be the example, the cautionary tale, the reminder of what can happen when content becomes consequence. The streets don't aim at egos, they hit proximity. And that's the lesson everyone in Adin's circle just learned. When you're close to chaos, you're in the blast radius. When you're adjacent to recklessness, you're at risk. And loyalty doesn't stop bullets. Friendship doesn't prevent violence. Proximity is danger when the person you're standing next to is playing with fire. So what happens next? Honestly, nobody knows. This story is still unfolding. More details will surface, more people will speak, more consequences will ripple out, and the internet will be watching every second of it. Because that's what we do. We consume tragedy, we analyze chaos, we turn real pain into entertainment, and we tell ourselves it's okay because we're just observing. But we're not just observing. We're participating, we're enabling, we're feeding the machine that creates situations like this. And until we collectively decide to stop, this will keep happening. So here we are, at the end of a story that doesn't have an ending yet, at the conclusion of a situation that's still unfolding, at the edge of a cultural moment that might change everything or might change nothing. This wasn't content. This was a warning shot to the entire internet. Rage bait doesn't end careers anymore. It ends lives. Trolling isn't edgy, it's dangerous. Clicks are not worth coffins. Virality is not worth violence. And entertainment is not worth someone ending up in a hospital fighting for their life. If you're a streamer, if you're a creator, if you're building a brand on controversy, learn from this. Understand that lines exist, respect that consequences are real, and recognize that the streets don't care about your subscriber count. They don't care about your net worth. They don't care that you're just making content. Once you cross into their world, you're playing by their rules, and their rules are written in blood. If you're a viewer, if you're part of the audience that consumes this content, stop rewarding chaos, stop clicking on drama, stop sharing violence, stop making trauma go viral, because every view is a vote, every share is encouragement, every engagement tells creators keep going, and if we want the culture to change, we have to change what we support. If you think this is fake, if you think this is staged, if you think this is just more internet nonsense, wait. More will come out, more details will surface, more people will speak, and when they do, you'll realize this was never a game. This was always real, and the consequences are only just beginning. Because trust me, this story is not over. There's still legal ramifications, still investigations, still people who haven't spoken yet, still details that haven't leaked, and what's coming next will shock everyone. This is just the beginning of a cultural reckoning that's been building for years. So stay locked in. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Adin Ross will change his approach? Do you think this will actually shift the culture? Or do you think in 2 weeks we'll all forget and move on to the next controversy? Make sure you like this video, hit subscribe, turn on notifications because we're covering every single twist as this story develops, and I promise you there's more coming. I appreciate you for watching, I appreciate you for engaging, and I hope this makes you think twice before you reward recklessness with your attention. Stay safe out there. Remember, your screen might protect you from violence, but it doesn't protect the people making the content you consume. And one day, that content might cost someone everything. Peace.